Welcome, everyone, to the You Can't Handle the Truth Sports podcast. There are those who call me rubbish, and with me is the voice of reason on this production, the Pistol. How you doing, mate? Going well?
Yeah, well, mate. Going well.
Very good, very good. Obviously we're an AFL-centric, in particular Fremantle Football Club-centric podcast, but the season's over. It's done. We're cooked. Turns out, after getting a long way there, you and I were eventually right to begin with.
Yeah, we took the long road to get there, but as usual with this footy club, they get our hopes quite up there, sitting third, a month out from finals, and then to crash from we're the only club to do it, sitting where we were a month out to crash out of the eight. So, yeah, quite disappointing.
So fitting. But I will say that, I mean, we took a long way to get there. I mean, if you remember right back to the start of the season, the predictions of where we were with our ladder position, I had us winning 7 games. So yeah. What did we win? 12 and a half?
Yeah, 12 and a half.
12 and a half?
Yeah.
So look, it's so Fremantle for me to be angry. Because if you had have said to me at the start of the year, hey, you're going to win, 12 and a half games, I'd say, all right, great, finals. That's good progression, right? Good progression.
Yep.
But, here we are, still with a bitter taste in our mouth, still upset with the way that things have gone. It's quite frustrating, but it is par for the course. We shouldn't be surprised.
I think the most disappointing fact is that we threw probably 2 or 3 games away that we should have won, which would have put us in the 8. Now, I'm not saying they would have taken us too far in the 8 in finals time, but it definitely would have had us in there.
So it's a really good point. Like if I'm trying to get the AFL ladder up now, actually, because it's not something that I've actually particularly thought of, other than the fact that we should have made the 8. But if I get the ladder up right now,
yeah,
if you can believe it, I can't find it on the AFL website. How ridiculous is that?
Under matches.
Matches, of course. You would think I would know this by now. So if you look at the games that we absolutely threw away, so I consider the West Coast game an absolute throwaway.
Yeah.
I consider
the Bombers game.
Sorry?
The Bombers game.
Yeah, the Essendon game, absolute throwaway. So there's 2 games. That brings us to 58. That takes us to 58, and we would be 6th on the ladder.
Yeah.
The Collingwood game, I know that they were beating us pretty much most of the game, and a lot of us would talk about that as being a game which we were lucky to get 2 points, and I would agree at the end. But then if I reflect back on the fact that Collingwood had half a team that game, they had so many injuries that game, we should have won that game. That then takes us to 60 points, which would put us with a greater percentage than both Geelong and GWS, likely.
Yeah. So
That
top
takes
4.
Three wins.
Yeah.
You look at the Carlton game. And I know, by the way, that we're playing the what if game. I mean, it doesn't really.
Yeah.
You know, I know it doesn't really stack up because the reality is all that matters is the actual results. But you know, we don't throw away that Carlton game at the end. People blame the umpires. No, you know, we gave that away. You know, Tracy missed an easy goal. We dropped some easy marks, and we let the umpires have the opportunity to have an impact. We don't throw that game away. Well, you know what? Then we're second on the ladder. So, I mean, it's a whole bunch of what ifs. I know it doesn't mean anything at the end of the day, but it's just frustrating. I think it shows that we're not far away.
Yeah.
But it also raises the same questions at the same time. Like what that Essendon game, I know you're very strong on the coaching for that Essendon game. You know, what was Aish doing in the middle? There is no bigger fan of James Aish than me. I don't think putting Aish in the middle should have, you know, he's a very, very good player. So, and he's played plenty of middle in the before.
It wasn't necessarily Aish in the middle. My main thing was that final stoppage, the last stoppage.
Yeah.
Centre-bouts where they set up their way.
Yeah.
And we had no intention to go and win that game the way we set up.
Yeah. So I mean, look, there's a lot of things that you can point to, a lot of singular moments. I know that there's another podcast, Freo podcast, and they they put a point, but no, an out in the full that Jai Amos missed against Collingwood, and I know he's being facetious about it, but it annoyed me because, you know, like, why do you point, even if you're joking or not, to the most talented young player we've got and point at a out on the full that he kicked from 45 metres out on a pretty tough angle? Yeah, he probably should have kicked a point, and yeah, we drew that game. But you know what I mean? Like, you can't.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about that during the Collingwood game, like, are we going to talk about the first 3 quarters where most of the side was dog shit?
Yeah. That is, if I'm going to point at fucking anything, how about we point to the fact that we still don't fucking start games well enough? We give 4 goals up every fuking first quarter. How about we look at that, Justin? Fuck me. Now I'm actually wound up because it drives me nuts. And his responses of, I'm trying not to make – well, when are you going to fucking make something about it? Anyway.
It should – so try not to make too much of it. Yeah, okay. Now you've missed the 8 because of it. So what are you going to do in the off-season now? So he mentioned in his one of his – it might have been straight after the game when he was talking about what he's going to work on in the pre-season and off-season around the starts and finishes and whatever else. So if he doesn't get that into practice to start the year, he's in a lot of trouble from his own contract point of view. And I know he manages himself, but I think everyone knows we're not far away, as we just pointed out. We potentially, what if, could have been top 4. So the expectation should be top 4 next year.
Yeah.
Because we're out of the 8, so we really should have a similar draw, as in scale of hardness.
Yeah. You know, you're dead right there. I would point to the fact that what Justin tells some mug punter like me about, I'm trying not to make too much of it, versus what the reality is behind closed doors. That's the other thing to consider. It just winds me up every time I think about it, because any fool can see that our first quarters are a problem.
Yeah.
Like Isabel, you know, like, oh, the Docker's up and it's quarter time. No, she'd be able to work out, why are the Dockers always up? You know, like, why aren't the Dockers? right. Yeah,
Yeah.
why aren't they?
Yeah.
I'm with you, sweetheart. I'm with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look, disappointing way to end. I think I sent you a message when it was about, I think it was the Essendon game. No, it was definitely the Essendon game. I don't know if you remember this. And we had gone from being 25 points up to 1 point up. And I said something to the effect of, watch us lose this game, watch us lose the next 3 games, and watch us miss the finals. Something like that.
Yeah.
Now, anyone would say, well, that you're just being a pessimist. But at what point? At what point does pessimism just become realism? Because this is what I battle with. I battle with this all the time. I'm sitting there just going, I can see this happening. This is going to happen because it always happens. This is,
Yeah.
and I wish, we've had Ryzak on the pod a couple of times, and he's the eternal optimist. My old boy, he's the eternal optimist. At what point, and I wish I was like that, but I'm just tired of seeing the exact same garbage. The same. You would be foolish to have not thought, well, we're in trouble here and we're going to, because it was always happen that way.
I guess the one thing I will say is when we first started this pod in the off season earlier this year, we were talking about the game plan sort of and how we were playing last year.
Yeah.
I'll easily take what got served up this year over last year's debacle.
100%.
So
yeah,
I'll give some credit to, I guess, there has been a shift and we have played some good footy this year.
Yeah.
Although it hasn't been consistent even within the same game. I think I mentioned that quite a few times, that pressure gauge it's up and down constantly.
Yeah.
It's never there to start, as you just mentioned. So if we get the same level of improvement from 23 to 24 and then through to 25, the same level, potentially we'll be, I don't know, in the finals, top 4-ish sort of range. If we get that same level of improvement.
I mean, it's a big if.
We're talking about ifs, and we could go backwards, and we could be like. I think we'll find a new coach a little bit easier than the West Coast, but
I want to get into that. I want to get into that a bit later. But I'm with you. Yeah. So I think today we're going to dive back into one of our other passions, which is the NFL a little bit. I think we've hinted at this time and in the past, but I actually want to get stuck into it a little bit because the season's over. And to be honest with you, I'm not interested in the finals this one.
Yeah, now that we're not in it, I'll take it a sort of a little bit of an interest, but I'm not really.
But before we do get into the NFL, I think it's probably worth us just having a bit of a chat, maybe about the off season, what that holds for us. We've done this in previous pods as well, but I think as time goes on, more information comes out, different bombshells break, and then come up, and then so it's an evergreen topic. So we'll get into that, but then also I wouldn't mind looking at some of the positives, negatives. Just maybe 3 positives, 3 negatives each, and then we can move on to the NFL. So, starting up, look, the off season, we've had some contractual news yesterday. They announced that we signed 3 players, Banfield for 2 years,
Sturt and
Wagner for 2 years, and Sturt for 2 years. So, look, I'm happy with that, particularly Sturt.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone was going to be chasing Wagner, but I like the way Wagner played.
Yeah, I like him too.
I think he's got a bit of grit, a bit of toughness. He's got good skills and he's got some dash. He's almost to me like a bit of a poor man's Jordan Clark.
Yeah, To me, he's, and we'll get into one of Baker in a minute, but he seems to me to be our Liam Baker, where he can play all the roles that we want Baker to come in and play.
So I don't think. Yeah, all right. We'll get to Baker in a sec, but I don't think Baker will be playing halfback flank. If he's no chance of coming to Freo anyway, but I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think we would be playing him halfback flank if he were.
No, I'm just saying where he has played in the past. That's sort of how Wagner. Yeah.
Yeah. The one, I mean, Banfield, he reportedly had interest from North Melbourne. I think North Melbourne, if they're chasing Jack Darling, they're chasing anyone. So, you know, I like Banners. I think he tries hard. He frustrates me because I think he just isn't quite at the level. And then we end up suffering, because he, I think more than anyone, he'll have games where he kicks 3 goals and and have a real impact. But he more than anyone seems to just go absolutely missing, like ghosts you on, like completely missing. Won't get a touch. Won't even get near it. And so that's why he sort of frustrates me a little bit. And I think that's the difference between him being a very good, or being a class AFL player and really just being what he is, which is a bit of a run of the mill role player.
Yep.
But the one that I'm very happy with is Sturt. There were rumours, again, taken for what they're worth, but there were rumours that he was, potentially looking elsewhere, back to Victoria, but signing a 2-year deal is a commitment from him, and it's a commitment from us. And I like the way he did the same thing last year. He ended the year very well last year, and he's ended the year very well this year.
Yep.
Hits the scoreboard. I think the knock on him in the past has always been perhaps his intensity around the ball and to chase and defensively. But I think that he's worked on that, and I think he's actually a classy player. So
absolutely.
I'm trying to. He's one that I struggle to make a comparison to on the sort of player that he is. I don't know that we've really had any player like him before. And I battle around the league. Who's the comp?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on those three?
Yeah, very similar to what you've just stated there. I think Sturt's obviously a good one. No doubt he would have had interest from interstate. Banners as well. There was some rumours about him being potentially on the trade block. But being a WA boy, I got no issues with him re-signing. And Wagner. Love everything he does, really.
Yeah, I think with Banfield, one thing that you can't knock is that I think he comes from the Caleb Sarong, Andy Brayshaw school of, this is my club, I love my club, I don't want to leave my club, and he's the sort of guy that I think at the end of his, once he's retired, he could, in 2 years' time, he may have not got, depending on what happens with our list, he may end up playing a whole bunch of Peel and then leaving, and then play another couple of years elsewhere. But he's going to be one of those guys where at the end of his career, he's going to be a Freo guy at heart.
Yeah.
He'll never
probably just something on him as well. He got nominated for the Jim Steins Award this week, so that's the community engagement piece there. So
you need good, solid citizens.
Yeah.
And while you can't have players who are just completely ineffectual, sitting on your list, clogging up your list, I think that he offers enough where if we were to get, some additional players in, then, he, even though he's on the outside, when injuries play their part, he can come in and do a job.
Yeah.
I think I remember it was last year. Was it last year when he played almost every game as a sub?
Yeah, might have been last year. Yeah.
And I think I remember a quote from Justin Longmuir saying that people wouldn't quite know just how much he hurts when he doesn't get selected or when he gets made a sub.
Yeah.
And I think that sums him up. Is he gives everything. That is one thing. He may not have the skills. He may go missing, but you can never actually doubt his his endeavour.
Yeah.
And with our team, sometimes, and I think every AFL supporter would say this. Sometimes, some players look like they're not actually putting in the 100%. I don't think you could ever say that about Banners.
No. I mean, that was the knock on Monday early days too, that he looked like he was only going at half pace. But, I mean, that's just how Monday looks, the same as Pendlebury.
Yeah.
They look like they've got all the time in the world.
Yeah.
I'm not comparing them to Banfield, I'm just saying.
That would be the first time Banfield compared Pendlebury and Mundy.
Yeah.
And probably the last.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It then raises, some questions about some of the other guys that we've got, who haven't quite gotten a deal across the line yet. Probably the two I would like to talk about would be Tom Emmett and Nathan O'Driscoll. Actually, and I will throw in Liam Reedy there as well, because I think that, the reports were that he's agreed to a 1-year deal.
Yeah, I keep hearing that, but I can't find anything official. So
Banners signed this 2-year deal, or they didn't announce that till yesterday, and that was evidently done a month ago. So for whatever reason, it might be just a matter of some minor verbiage in the.
It might be a verbal commitment, but yeah.
So Liam Reedy, look, we need him in as such that you can't not have a backup ruckman.
Third, yeah.
And I think Noble, they'll give him an extension, even though he's been playing resis.
Yeah, he's one of those project players.
He's a real project player. He was, I'm not saying he's Dean Cox, but Dean Cox spent how many years on the rookie list? Took him 5-6 years to develop, and I honestly feel like that's what the Dockers see Noble being. So we need Reedy.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't want him playing too much. I don't think. If Darcy can get up and about. So he's one. You've got Tom Emmett, who I would be happy to sign. But whether or not he wants to actually sign, that's a question.
Yeah, I think we will. I think he'll struggle to get a game if he'll be nowhere near the 23. If we get, and we'll talk about the additions later, but if we get some of those additions, there's no way he's going to be near the 23 because you're probably going to give games to Cooper Simpson. He probably needs to perform the first half of next year as well. But yeah,
I don't know if you can hear this.
Is that the rain?
Oh my god! It's actually hail. Smashing the place right now. Yeah, sorry, keep going.
No, you're right. I think Tom Emmett may even look elsewhere, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
There may be a bit of a conversation around, look, we're happy to offer you a deal. It might be the one or the two, but game time wise, you're probably not going to see a lot of footy. And to be fair, he didn't see a lot of footy this year either.
Yeah.
He maybe played 3, 4, 5 games.
Yeah. I was a little bit. I must admit, I was a little bit disappointed with his year this year because with Schultz gone, there was an opening. And I didn't expect him to be as good as Schultz, but he'd shown some real signs before. And this year, he didn't really. I think he had one game where he hit the scoreboard, got 3 goals. He didn't quite hit the scoreboard like we needed him to.
Yeah.
And Yeah, so that'll be an interesting one. And as you say, if we get some of these other guys in, we'll see. He probably won't have a spot in the 22 at least to begin with.
Yep.
The last one is Nathan O'Driscoll. You go first. You run down what you think.
I think he's going to be one of those guys who I think they wouldn't mind playing, but he's going to be behind a lot of players because he's pretty limited in what he does on the field. I think he's that winger, but I don't think he's good enough to overtake anyone and have a midfield role. I don't think he's a small forward. So I think he's going to be sitting in the 25 to 32, 33 range on the list, waiting for an injury or something to happen. I don't think he's going to see much footy. And he might be another one similar to Tom Emmett that might be to look if you want to look around for more game time, because you're probably not going to see a lot of it.
Yeah, look, I got a lot of emotional responses on Twitter.
It's unusual.
Yeah, with respect to Nathan O'Driscoll. In my mind, there are too many people who are remembering 2022. And then looking at this year, and okay, he was okay against, was it GWS, the second last game? Yeah.
Yeah.
He came on and provided a bit of a spark. So, yeah. And then, he was okay, I suppose, against Port. But I just don't think he has it. He doesn't have the skill set, I don't think. He never, his last 2 years, take those last two games aside, and yes, injuries are a part of it. His last 2 years, he's been garbage. Like when he's played, he ended up spending a whole bunch of time in the waffle last year because he was no good. He's youngish, 24? Probably a bit
somewhere around there, yeah.
23. He's been on the list, I think, for 4 or 5 years. He spent a lot of that time injured, but yeah, I could
22.
see 22.
Yeah.
Right. So he's young, but I could see him being one of those guys who you delist and then re-rookie. Because,
and roll the dice that he's a delisted free agent.
Yeah. But there's a lot of people who are saying, he's got interest elsewhere, apparently Port Adelaide and Western Bulldogs, and maybe even the Eagles. I've got Eagles people saying, well, we'll just why don't we trade for Erasmus and O'Driscoll and that? If anyone believes that the Dockers are actually going to deal with West Coast, I've got some real estate, some beachside real estate to sell you, in the Simpson Desert. There is no way the Dockers will deal with West Coast, in my opinion. I would be shocked. There isn't much that could floor me more than if we were to deal any of Erasmus. They're saying Brody, Erasmus, Reedy, O'Driscoll. The Dockers will not trade any of those guys to you. We might trade them to other clubs, but we will not be dealing with West Coast. And the reason for that is, one, we hate you. We don't want it. Two, can you imagine the narrative if the Dockers were to trade Will Brody to West Coast, as an example, and then he goes out and does what he did in 2022, becomes their best midfielder, ends up winning a best and fairest or something like that, which Will Brody could absolutely do at that club.
Yeah.
No way would we live that down. For one, I would be angry. Our supporters would be angry. For two, the media would be relentless. And for three, West Coast would be. We don't want to give them a leg up in anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just not going to happen. Now, will Brody be playing somewhere else? Well, I kind of hope for his sake he is.
Absolutely. The amount of injuries we had and opportunities for him to come in this year, and it was no.
Yeah.
So I'd be staggered if he's on the list next year.
Yeah. Yeah. I just...
But not that I don't want him. I just, as you said, for his own
benefit. Like, if Longmuir isn't going to play him ever, well,
Yeah.
then what's the point? You might as well just...
So I think he's contracted for another 2 years, eh?
2 or 1.
Yeah, well, he's at least contracted for next year.
I reckon he's definitely contracted for next year. I know that. I reckon he signed a 3-year deal. In his good year, 2022, which would then mean 23, 24. He would be out of contract at the end of next year. But it might have been 3 years on top of the 1-year deal he had.
So 26, he's out of contract.
26. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So 2 more years, I'd get his manager to look around.
He should be asking for a trade. But yeah,
he's from Victoria.
Yeah, from my neck of the woods.
Yeah.
I think he was from my hometown, actually.
Origin Murray Bushrangers.
Yeah. So he look, it's quite disappointing with him the way it's all panned out. But so they're the players. Look, what do I really think? I actually think the Dockers will probably give O'Driscoll a deal. I actually think that, and I think they'll probably give him a 2-year deal. I wouldn't do it, but I think the Dockers actually will.
I mean, looking at his 4 years, he didn't play his first season in 21. Played 12 games 22, 10 in 23, and got the 2 games this year. So I know he had an injury there, but he's only ever played half a season.
Yeah. But let's not forget, part of the reason why he wasn't getting a game in 2023 is because he was no good. He was playing like garbage.
Yeah.
So
of all people, Liam Henry was probably above him.
Yeah. God. That guy. All right. So before we maybe move on to sort of other things, NFL and that, look, it'd be crazy for us not to talk about some of the proposed trades and stuff. So we've obviously spoken about Baker and Bolton in the past.
Yeah.
I believe that there is zero chance that Liam Baker is playing for Freo. I just...
So this is where, I guess, I don't disagree with you on that. So this is where, I guess, the limited characters on Twitter or X comes into it. So I agree. I do not think that he'll be playing at Freo next year. I guess my point that I was trying to put across was we've offered the contract, so we're obliged to honour that. Even though that Cozzy's now put his interest in, we need to follow through with Baker. So we're probably hoping in the background that Baker says, no, I'm going to West Coast. So they then can line up the Cozzy Pickett deal again. But at the moment, they've probably given one to Bolton, given one to Baker. We've got Chad Warner there. So they're the 3 priorities, mainly because we've probably offered them contracts. I'm not saying Pickett's not, and he would absolutely be one of the high priorities, but at the moment, they've already identified those 3, and they have to follow through with those. I guess that's where I was coming from with those. I agree with you on Baker. I think he's no chance to get to us.
So, and this is where my point comes in. If we believe, and I believe the club believe, that Baker isn't going to pick us, then we can move on. If there will be some sort of communication from his manager, and it's already come out, leaked out, it's believed his preference is West Coast. The second that comes out, we are no longer held to our obligations.
I think everything's contingent on the coach, who they name as coach. If they name McQualter as coach, I think he's an absolute shoo-in to go to West Coast. Well, not McQualter, but Baker, an absolute shoo-in from his time at Richmond.
I don't think even the coach... I don't... Well, yeah, maybe it does.
You sort of know who you want to be... Yeah. What the setup's going to be. Like, at the moment, it's a rabble. Like.
Yeah. Well, they're going to have to. I mean, the Eagles, I'm sure, will at some point name a coach, right? But
the issue is a lot of their guys that they're looking at are involved in finals at the moment. I know they spoke to Stephen King when he was over here for the Geelong game. They've spoken to a couple of others, but they're probably yet to speak to Montgomery, yet to speak to McQualter. They'll have to wait for.
Well, where's McQualter now?
Don't know, but apparently they haven't spoken to him yet.
He's not at Richmond anymore. I know that.
Melbourne, I think.
Melbourne. Well.
Yeah, so their season's over, obviously, but I don't think they've spoken to him.
Because there's a report coming out this morning that he's now believed to be the front runner, McQualter.
Yeah, but then if you look at another,
yeah,
so Fox Footy had bloody
Stephen King.
Yeah. So it depends on where it's coming from. Yeah.
So I kind of hope, and I think it's unlikely this happens. I kind of hope the Eagles get Bolton and Baker. I can't see it happening because of the capital that they would need to get to have it happen, which is why I then hope that he stays at Richmond. I've changed my mind. I don't want Bolton unless he brings Pickett with him. Now, my rationale for that is that we have a lot more issues than just a Shy Bolton filled hole to fill. If we get Bolton by himself, he's 27, he'll be 28. By the time we're good, he'll be gone.
Is he that old?
He's 27, as I understand.
25.
Okay, then why did I think 27? I thought I saw 27. But okay, if he's 25, so he'll be 26 next year, or is he 26 this year?
I don't know. It says 25 at the moment. I'm not sure when his birthday is.
I'm going to find that out, because if he's 27 next year, right, it'll be past season anyway. But my point is, I'm worried with him. If we get him and Pickett, well, then I can see a ridiculous forward line that can't be stopped. If we get Bolton by himself, is he really going to add that much? I know he kicked our ass when we played him. I'm worried that he is going to come home and lose all motivation, and we will have paid up like chumps 2 first-round picks for him. If he's going to do that, I'll go to West Coast. Go to West Coast. This draft is meant to be so deep. Why can't we just... And we've got so many kids that are 21, 22, 23. Why can't we top them up with high-end talent and end up with, in 2-3 years' time, a North Melbourne-like situation where they've got now North Melbourne are garbage, don't get me wrong, but they've got so much talent that eventually they're going to be very, very good. There's no way around that, right? We've got Tassie coming in a couple of years' time.
Yeah.
Do we want to be giving up 2-3 first rounders in what they're saying is a super draft type scenario for one player, knowing that in 3 years' time we're not going to get any draft picks?
You could go along the same lines if you're looking at Warner, though, because he's going to cost more than Bolton.
Warner is a far better player than what Shy Bolton
had. I understand that, but if we're talking about super drafts and
next year, I don't know. Is next year a super draft? I don't know.
Don't know.
Who knows? It might, but I know that this draft is meant to be extremely deep. They're saying that like any of the top 12 picks have a case to be a top one, to be the top pick.
And how likely is Walls to nail one of those?
Yeah, well, yeah. I think the problem. You're right, because everybody knows my feelings on Walls. If he gets Warner, Bolton, and Pickett, I will shut my bloody mouth for years to come. The problem is I think that's highly unlikely, or it's looking extremely unlikely. And yeah, his involvement in our first round picks has been deplorable. I won't say first round picks. I'll say first picks. So we've had guys like, I think Clayton Hinkley was picked at pick 21 or something like that. Yeah. So our first picks, he generally screws up. So yeah. Well, I don't know, man.
I don't know. I think Bolton by himself would be okay. Like the guy's kicking around 40 goals a year as a small forward. He was sitting there next to Rewalt and Lynch, so he had those guys to, I guess, fight for goals, and was still kicking around the 40 mark. He'll be sitting at the feet of our three. Walters potentially he might retire in the off season. He might play next year. I don't think he's going to play a lot next year. If you told me that we'd get Shybolt would pick 9 or 10, like if he was to be drafted this year and he was going to be a 40 goal player a year, you'd pick him up.
In that context, yeah. But the problem is it's not that context. Pick 9 and 10. Or it's pick 9
It won't be pick 9 and 10 for him.
Okay, well, the other thing that I think people are bypassing is Richmond have every right, and I don't blame them, to say, well, it's 9 and 10 or nothing. Or it's 9, 10 and future second or nothing. And if we just don't pay it, they've got the whip hand here. They're the ones who control it. So I who's to say Richmond won't say it's 3 first rounders or nothing? And then we'll obviously laugh and go, nah, piss off. But I think people are already counting Bolton playing for Freo. I just don't think that it's that close. And again, I'm kind of hoping that the Eagles come in and swoop in and get him. And that way they can pay for a mountain for him and he'll be finished in 4 years. I don't know Shy Bolton in any way, shape or form. He might be the most motivated bloke in the world. Have we ever, can you remember one situation of somebody who isn't named Peter Bell who came home to play for Freo after having a successful career elsewhere that has worked out?
Josh Carr.
Yep, and that was for 4 years, and then he asked to be traded back again. I can't think of one. Luke McFarlane.
He was.
But
he was in full.
Okay, he didn't request to come. It was.
No. That's right.
Yeah. So, we've had good players come in. Like Jordan Clark has been good, but he was never really getting a proper game at Geelong. I'm talking about established footballers. Established.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing that's changed recently is we've seen to be there's an interest there to join us where there hasn't been in the past. We were a club that people were leaving, so you had like obviously Chera, name escapes me, but the winger for Melbourne, Langdon, Neil,
yeah,
he was one.
We've had a lot lately.
Yeah, but we're just starting to turn that corner where players are actually wanting to even look at us. Like even so, I know you've got your issues with the Baker thing, but if you look at it from the point of Baker bleeds blue and yellow, yet he's still considering joining Freo, I think that says a bit about the attraction to the club.
I think it says more about West Coast than it does us.
Yeah, a bit of both.
He's one guy who I don't think you'll ever question his motivation. I think he seems like the sort of guy who's going to. Because he's had to fight for he's not a naturally gifted, athlete or anything like that. Like say Shy Bolton or Trent Crode or. So I think he is always going to work. That's why when he goes to West Coast, he will probably win a best and fairest or 2 or 3.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, yeah, I don't know. The other thing not to discount here is, and people have pointed this out to me, is that, at what point do we just go, well, the past doesn't dictate the future. It's just the past. So what's happened in the past doesn't mean, the great Ben
Yeah.
Miller. The great Ben Miller always says, past results do not dictate the future results. They just indicate what has happened in the past. And he's right. It is right. But I will be so, because the stakes here are higher because of Tassie.
Yeah.
We are going to literally be in the same. And then there's now talk of Darwin, of Northern Territory team, potentially in like 2032. We could, if we don't do this right, if we don't get this.
But I guess and if you look at the length of our contracts we've offered, some are out to 2030, 28, that sort of range, which takes us past or in line with Tassie. I think we've already got, well, it looks like they've got a mind towards that already.
Well, they would have to.
Yeah.
They would have to. But yeah, I guess it all comes down to, and Longmuir has said it. He said it in his exit interview after the Port game. He feels like we've got the current team right now to contend for a premiership. So he doesn't.
Yeah.
He feels like with or without Bolton, or with or without Pickett, or whoever, that we can contend. Don't know that I believe that or agree with that, but.
So if that's what he's saying, then I'm assuming that's what the list management and the rest of the crew at the club are saying. So that to me says that they're 100% not going to the draft.
Yeah.
So if they're looking for the now, they're getting the little shiny pieces to add to the.
I actually took it a different way. I took it as that we're not going to sell the farm for additional players because we already believe we've got a team that can contend, and so that's the way I took it. But it's funny, two different two different stances. Yeah, you might be right. You might be right. All right. So,
but yeah, I guess the overall thing was, while it looks like I was disagreeing with you on Twitter, I do agree on the Baker thing.
No, that's okay. Look, he will be playing for West Coast.
Yeah.
What did I say earlier? I'd be absolutely shocked. I would be as shocked if Andrew Brayshaw left that I would be if Baker came.
Just on Brayshaw, everyone's starting to freak out about he hasn't signed a contract yet. He's contracted for next year.
Yeah, I know. And
he's not going to sign anything until next year. They may do an extension this year, but
I reckon they'll do it.
He doesn't need to until next year.
Do you remember last year? Was it when Sarong signed a contract? Like, was it Christmas Day? He signed
something like that.
Yeah. Or is it? I think it was Christmas Day. They released. Sarong has signed for another 6 years or something. I reckon that's what they'll do with Brayshaw. He isn't going anywhere.
No.
I'm his biggest critic. He's not going anywhere. But and you know where the hysteria comes from. It's when they talk about these 3 big players next year who are free agents. Restricted free agents, and Brayshaw's one of those. So that's where it's coming from. We'll talk about that on Gettable. And on Gettable, they say they honestly don't think he's going anywhere, but they list him, and then obviously everybody gets hold of that.
Brayshaw.
Yeah, Richmond supporters are now saying, oh, well, maybe we can just get their first 2 picks and Brayshaw, or we'll get their first pick and Brayshaw for Bolton and Baker. And anyway, look, very quickly, because I'm desperate to get to some NFL, but so just 3. I was thinking about this earlier. 3 positives, 3 negatives for the season, and then we can, our future episodes of this, I suspect, will probably just be talking about off season and and NFL. But I think the three positives for me were very, very clear, and that being Josh Tracy. I never, in my wildest dreams, would expect that he has turned into the player that he looks like he is going to be, which is this dominant alpha male key forward with ridiculously good and accurate kicking.
Yeah.
He was probably the biggest positive for me. The second biggest positive I had was Hayden Young. I think his talent is limitless. He has poise. He's got kicking. His kicking skills are obviously immense. He started to hit the scoreboard. He was rarely held out of a game, and I think that's partly because he's got a bigger body than some others. And probably the third one I'd say you already touched on a little bit, but I think the game plan changed from chip to nothing. It enabled us to score a bit more. I think they were probably my three biggest positives.
Yep. Yeah, I sort of tend to agree with the positives. Tracy was obviously one. Not that he came from nowhere, but the improvement he's had between last year and this year has been absolutely unreal. We were all expecting a miss to be the focal point. And
have you seen the footage of your man Tim Gossage discussing Josh Tracy I think it was in the pre-season this year? Have you seen that?
I may have.
Yeah, I think Scott Cummings says something to the effect of, well, look at Josh Tracy. He could come big, and then Gossage just completely dismisses it and says, nah, he's got one foot out the door. He's gone. He's going to be nowhere as a footballer. And and it was pretty much word for word what I just said there. And I laughed because I probably at the time was leaning more towards Gossage's views than I was Cummings.
Yeah, I think there would have been a fair few people on that same path. Like, he had a couple of games there and this is pre-24, where he did kick a few goals and take a big couple of marks and whatever else. But just his impact on the game this year has been insane. When he hasn't got the ball, like his tackling, his pressure, all that sort of stuff. The game plan again, I mentioned earlier, the improvement. Basically, we started this podcast off the back of the disappointment of how we were playing, as well as some other things. But that was one of the factors, and just the improvement from one year to the next has been good. I think you said Young. I'll go with Clark.
Right.
His work from the back half, linking up to the midfield and forwards, has been, he's had one of those years. He's probably quite unlucky to be not get that final spot in the All Australian. I know we had two in there already with Sarong and Ryan. I think we spoke about this before. They probably wouldn't have Ryan and Clark in the side. I'm not sure who you'd take out to put
Go by
Clark in, but he had one of those years where, he quite possibly could have got himself in there.
Yeah, I think he'll get in next year. If you go by anyone else, you saw some ridiculous. Has there ever been a worse All Australian than Luke Ryan? Well, first of all, dickhead, this is his second All Australian. And second of all, he was averaging 500 metres gained, although people pointed towards the fact he was kicking in. I think he was worthy. I would have probably changed Harris Andrews for Wiedering myself, but that's just me. I'm sure Blues would have gone, nah, that's crazy. So, and then as far as the negatives go, look, I think for me, obviously the last four games, not making finals.
Yep.
I think that we had. I think our first quarters was just ridiculous, and that will forever hinder us until we can resolve that. And then probably the last one I would say there was, I think as a team, and I include the coaching on this, we had an ability to be completely ineffective at the important times. So it's not necessarily a game plan, although game plan, you talk about the Essendon game. But the big moments. Now, is this experience? Is it the players? What is it? I'm not sure. But I think I said this a number of times. Whenever you expect Freo to stand up, you can guarantee they'll let you down. And so, and I think that if you look at that statement in a microcosm of context of, certain moments in games, we more often than not, disappointed at those times. Even the Sydney game, which was our best win of the year, we still gave that. We relied on Logan McDonald missing a
to miss
45.
Yeah.
Now, we would have given up a 30-odd point lead to lose that game.
Yeah.
We didn't. We won, but we need to look at that. Like they need players who are going to stand up when it matters. And then ultimately, that's when I talk about guys like Switkowski and Banfield and Emmett when he was playing. And, these guys who just simply don't seem to stand up when we need it.
Yep.
If you've got nothing to add to that, we can move on. But
my negative is probably, I guess, the fitness of Sean Darcy. I think that affects our side more than it probably should. Obviously, it affected us a great deal with when Reedy came in. Like, I gave him I was sympathetic in his first game against GWS, and then he got absolutely destroyed against Port again. And even like on the weekend, like Peel, he had 66 hitouts or 65, and they lost the game, right? I went to go on the AFL site looking for hitouts to advantage, and they didn't have a stat there for it. I just wonder how many of those 66 actually went to a teammate. It's great to get your hands on the ball, but at some point the opposition just reads you.
What's Ruckcraft? It's Ruckcraft, right?
So I know he's only relatively new. I think I mentioned it last pod that he was a basketballer 3-4 years ago, so he's relatively new. So he's learning that whole craft, but getting your hands on it 65, 66 times, and you should be dominating the midfield there. Obviously our starts was the other one for me.
Well, it's going to be very interesting times in the next few weeks. As I mentioned to you off air, I'm over to the US for work for the next 10 days, and then I get home for a few days, and then I'm off to Japan with the family. So for 3 weeks. So I really won't be back until October 10th. We might be able to get another
post GF.
Yeah, post GF. Yeah, I won't even watch that game. But we might get another one of these in between US and Japan, but we'll have to see.
Oh.
Now, NFL.
Right.
I love my American sports, as you can tell. My Minnesota Wild hockey jumper wearing proudly. We're garbage, but that's okay. I'm used to that. NFL season. So, kicks off this weekend. I happen to be in Louisiana. I was hoping I could get to a New Orleans game, but that's not going to happen. Look, being a Broncos fan, I have the problem of having to deal with a guy in division at least twice a year, and if we're ever going to be good again, we're going to have to keep dealing with this guy for the next 15 years of just absolute superstardom, and his name is Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Last year, the Chiefs won their 3rd Super Bowl out of 4. I'd argue that they probably should have had 4 out of 4 because they were the better team, but Brady is Brady, and the offensive line just let Mahomes down in that game. But they beat the 49ers last year. They did that after letting a guy named Tyreek Hill go the year before, who was the most outstanding wide receiver. Kelsey was battered and bruised, but managed to come good at the end of last year.
Yeah.
And then their receivers were a hodgepodge of pretty much nobodies. They had Kadarius Toney, who lost his mind at the end of the year, was dropping catches, and eventually didn't even get on the field in the Super Bowl. They had Scanling. What's his name? Scanling. Scanling. His last name's Scanling. I've forgotten his first name.
Yeah.
Average wide receiver. And then a core of just other, just average receivers. So I can't put it any other way. And so they were able to win a Super Bowl off the back of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid.
Yeah.
News for the rest of the competition. Those guys aren't going anywhere. Andy Reid's 70, so he's pretty old, but he is looking like he's going to continue on for at least another few years. I know that, Mahomes is only 29, I believe. Kelsey is getting more and more beat up. He's starting to look a little bit like Gronk towards the end of his career.
Yeah.
Effective, but not probably as dominant as what he used to be.
Yep.
So they play, in my mind, until we see them start to disintegrate. I don't know of another team that can actually compete with them.
Nah, I've got them as obviously the favourite for the bowl again, and then probably back that up with a rematch with the 49ers. But I've got an outside chance. I mentioned it. Might have been off air. The Texans.
Yeah.
They've got Stroud, who realistically, if he gets going, he could be a smoky for a MVP. They've got pretty good up and coming offensive coordinator, and their defense is top 5. It's going to be hard to bet against them this year.
Well, they just picked up Steph Diggs, who is a fading product, but still pretty decent. They've got Tank Dell. They've got I'm with you.
Mixon at the running back.
Mixon.
Yeah.
So they're
Schultz at tight end. He's no mug.
Yeah. So no, I'm with you.
And the other smoky I had, and I don't know, you may laugh, but they get old mate back this year from his ruptured Achilles, the Jets.
Yeah, okay. For a second then I thought you were going to talk about Atlanta with Kirk.
No. So Rodgers, he comes back. He basically hasn't really started for him. I think it was the first series in week 1.
It was the fourth play. Play. So I think he'd thrown one ball and handed it off twice, and then the fourth one he tore the Achilles.
Yeah. He really gets to sink his feet in there now, and they had a reasonably good defense. They just had nothing going forward with the quarterback they had last year in cover, and they weren't expecting to use that guy at all. So, Rodgers coming back just improves that offense straight away. And they haven't got the worst defensive weapons either. If I just bring their depth chart up, like Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Tyler Conklin.
Yeah.
They got Lazard. So there's still a few weapons there they can use.
Yeah. Look, Yeah, look, I think the Eagles. The Packers. Uh, the Jets.
Jets.
I'm looking at the schedule in front of me. I'm like, no, the Jets. The biggest thing stopping the Jets is the fact they're the Jets. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
There's always that caveat. Yeah.
they're like the Fremantle Dockers of the NFL. Really, nothing ever goes right for them. They think that they get themselves in a good position and they trip over themselves. So yeah, everything that you've said there makes sense. The other one I was just talking about with KC, they just re-signed Chris Jones as well, so they're stacked. The Chiefs are stacked, but it's very hard for any team in any sport to stay up. Like they're a dynasty, right? They've got 3 out of 4. My definition of dynasty is 3 in a row or 3 out of 5 years. So I don't
Yeah.
think anyone could, and they've been to the Super Bowl 4 years. I don't think anyone can question, the Chiefs whether they're a dynasty or not.
No.
So, but it's very hard to stay up, and every team is plausibly trying to improve. The Jets, I think, if Rodgers can get his mind right, I don't know how much he really. I mean, there was even talks about him running for candidacy as the vice president. You know,
Ah,
I know
yeah.
that
There's always those rumours going around.
because
Yeah.
he's friends with Kennedy or whatever Junior. But so, not saying that was ever going to happen, but is his mind really in it? Like, I don't know. Like, he's 40. Yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, 40. You'd want to. I think he's got something to prove to
yeah.
the Packers.
There's a bit of a legacy play there.
Yeah.
A bit like a Tom Brady going to Tampa
Yeah.
situation.
You only did a picture at the Patriots. Okay, well, hold my beer.
Yeah. So, very very exciting start to the year.
It's a big game first up, to be honest.
Yeah. The Chiefs and Ravens at Arrowhead. Ravens are pretty bloody good as well.
I mean, obviously Lamar. Yeah, Derrick Henry. Flowers is going to be unreal this year.
Zay Flowers.
Um,
So they've got a pretty decent roster. Obviously Lamar is 2-time MVP now after winning it last year. I would think the Chiefs will win that one at home, but the Chiefs have a propensity to drop early games as well. They've got a funny habit of losing a game or two that you think, is this it? Are they starting to fall apart? And then they'll win their 12 games and then, then do what they need to do in the playoffs. So I look at the money line on this. KC's 167 and Baltimore's 220. Baltimore finished last year against KC horribly. Like, they were the favourites at home. KC came in and punched them in the mouth.
Yeah.
This one, for me, it would not surprise me if the Ravens come up and won. That could be a value bet.
Might be, but Lamar's only 1 from 4 against the Chiefs when he's played them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tend to agree. I'm leaning Baltimore as well.
I'd probably consider taking them with the points. I don't know what the actual spread.
What are they? What?
I don't know what the spread is. I should really look that up.
I should have it here.
So if it's
3 at the moment.
3, right? So that's the standard 3 points for playing away. Or playing at home. KC get the 3 points, right? Yeah.
I'd be tempted on the under as well. That's at 46. I don't think these are historically high games either. 46, from memory.
46, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. And it's not snow season yet, although KC's brutally cold, but they get obviously the snow games, but Yeah, so it's probably actually decent, better weather. Okay, it's interesting. I'll have to think on that one. We can move, I suppose, if you want. We'll go through some of these games. We won't go through every one of them, but before we do, maybe we can talk about our own teams. I noticed my Broncos, who are god awful. They've just named Bo Nix as captain. So that's and he's been given the obviously the starting job. Which his off season or his first off season was actually pretty impressive. I don't think he had a turnover. Sorry, an interception. And I think he showed a propensity to. I think he showed a pretty good propensity to control the ball, to not give up senseless turnovers, which is when you don't have a very good offense. The last thing you want to be doing is giving the ball up, with fumbles and stuff like that. So, it's going to be interesting to see how he goes. They pretty much they've blown up the list. They've completely blown up the list. They recruited Josh Reynolds, who's I think you would say he's a third wide receiver. Out of Detroit, so he's pretty decent. They've got Cortland Sutton, who remains. He's like one of the only players that we've sort of kept on from the bad old days of the last few years. So we've always got a pretty decent always got a pretty decent defense, and the first game is at home. And I don't know if you know much about the Broncos' record at home in first games. I think we've lost 1 out of the last 10.
Yeah, right.
So, it's look, we're playing Seattle, who I think are also pretty god awful. I think they're still running with Geno Smith. He's no good.
I think you're away to start.
Oh no, we are too. Whoops.
Yeah.
We are. No, you're right. We are. So, hence the reason why Seahawks are heavily favoured. And that makes sense because we're not any good. So yeah. Anyway, that's the Broncos. Maybe you want to give a bit of a rundown on your Patsies.
Yeah. So the Pats at the moment, they got in Drake May, but he's had a bit of a hit and miss preseason. He showed some glimpses, but Jacoby Brissett has got the QB spot at the moment.
Ouch.
So that doesn't bode well for our top pick from last draft. Things
3,
obviously
right?
can change pretty quick. Yeah, it's like we've taken our recruitment people over from Freo. We've had a fair few, sort of like you guys. We blew up the list a little bit. We've still got Stevenson at the running back position, and then we've just got a bunch of like Pokes, not too bad, and KJ Osborne we got in. He'll be all right. But Mario Douglas can be hit and miss. Hunter Henry's still at the tight end. We're going to struggle on offense quite a bit. Our D's not too bad. We can stay in games to a certain extent, but we just can't get the job done on the offensive side, and that's going to take some time. I think you'll see Drake May change to the number one at some point during the year. It'll just depend on how Jacoby goes in the first couple of weeks. If he has a shocking start, then I think you'll see Drake May start the second game.
So Hunter Henry's a good player. I like Hunter Henry. He had a garbage year last year. I think you guys brought him in this year.
Oh, yeah, but you could say that for most of the team. Like, we were just garbage on offense.
Yeah. Look, any team that's got Mac Jones as the starting QB is going to battle. And you've got
He's now gone, which is great.
He's gone. He's at the Jags.
Yep.
and will probably never play again. He'll probably just
Yep.
sit there.
Got the new head coach as well.
Yeah, is it Mayo? Mayo?
Yeah.
Jared Mayo?
Yep.
Yeah. So, look, I think the Pats, they needed to do what they were doing. They needed to. I mean, you had the greatest coach of all time. Everything has a lifespan. Everything's got an expiry date.
Yep.
So, look, I think you did the right thing there, and bringing in a new QB who I've listened to some. I listen to a lot of American radio, particularly sports radio, and there, yeah, a common theme of Drake May. Is he that good? Should have he been at 3?
Yep.
So there's some questions there, but hopefully for your sake, they're right. Look, it's not an easy task. They're going into Cincinnati, and it looks like Joe Burrow is actually fit and healthy.
Yeah.
And he is probably the only player, I think, that can hold a candle to Patrick Mahomes when he's fit and at his best. I
Yeah.
don't think Stroud may get there, maybe, but right now, I think it's Mahomes, daylight, and then Burrow. So it's going to be hard. They've managed to. They're a cheap organisation, the Bengals. So at the end of next year, you can expect a bunch of moves because guys like Jamar Chase and that Hendrickson and that they've already asked for trades with 1 year to go on their deal because the Bengals aren't really seemingly coming to the party
Yeah.
to pay them what they can get.
T. Higgins is the other one. That was.
Yeah. So Hendrick, so all 3 of those guys, right? But they've signed Burrow to a long-term deal, and Mahomes has proven that if you've got good enough quarterback play, you don't need epic receivers. Although it
Yeah.
So look, the Bengals are. I think the Bengals are a smoky team to actually challenge the Chiefs if they can stay fit and healthy, and that's obviously mostly around Burrow. And if they can even sign some of these guys, particularly Jamar Chase, if they can sign him to a longer term deal. T. Higgins is good, but he's a number 2. You could probably get better value by trading him and bringing someone else in. Hendrickson's obviously on the D. He is a guy that you would want to keep as well. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Did you want to just go through a few games of interest? You want to pick a couple of games that interest you? We've already gone through Ravens and Chiefs, and obviously the Broncos and Pats.
So obviously that first one will be quite good. I'm interested to see the Texans, how they start the year. I think Stroud, I like what he does. I think he might be that one that's going to come up and challenge your Burrow to be that number 2. And potentially, I think I mentioned before, he's got some MVP sort of caliber about him. Might not be this year, but he's definitely got that about him. Just looking at the other games now.
They're playing the Colts, right? So I would expect the Texans to go into the Colts and beat them. The Colts obviously got their new quarterback, who was new, like he was a first round pick, high pick last year, and he showed a few little bits and pieces, and then buggered up his shoulder. So he then missed the rest of the year. Richardson, his name is. But there's some real questions around their overall roster, I think, with the Colts. So I would expect the Texans to go into Lucas Oil Stadium and give them a bit of a touch-up.
Yep. Interested to see how your old QB goes for Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah.
It seems.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got the start, and Fields is got the number 2 at the moment. So
very
that's interesting in itself.
Yeah, very interesting strategy. So the Steelers are not a cheap organisation, they will pay who they need to when they need
Yeah.
to. But what they generally don't do from a strategy perspective is go out to the market and sign free agents unless they are value. Now, Russell Wilson, I think, proved with the Broncos that he's pretty much washed. I think he's going to go there, and they've got to go into the Falcons, and who have got some weapons with Pitts and Kirk Cousins. Is an effective quarterback. I'd say he's a top 10 quarterback. Although
Yeah.
after
Drake
Achilles
London.
injury, it'll be interesting to see what his mobility is like. But Russell Wilson with Justin Fields breathing down his neck, because they obviously signed two QBs who were seen as starting caliber QBs. Russell Wilson needs to perform straight up, and
Yeah.
he doesn't. The second he doesn't, they are going to bring in Fields. And Fields was largely underwhelming at the Bears, but he has moments, and he's had a few games where you go, man, this guy could be anything.
Yeah.
He
Yep.
plays a bit like CJ Stroud, except that Stroud's better.
Yeah.
So it will be very interesting to see. I agree how that game comes out.
I guess the other one is the Green Bay Philly game. Like, Philly's pretty stacked now, obviously with Hurts, Barkley, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Dotson, Godet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, the Eagles are under pressure too. Like the way they ended, they lost 8 of their last 9 games last year, and as I mentioned earlier, I happened to be in Houston for their playoff game win against Cleveland. And as I was leaving, there was a Philadelphia guy there, and the Eagles had just lost their playoff game, and he reckons that the overwhelming thought process is that they should be sacking the coach like right then and there. Philadelphia is a tough market. They are ferals. They hold no prisoners. So
you win or you're out, basically.
Yeah, they don't give you any grace period. So basically, is it Sirianni who's their coach?
Yeah.
Sirianni, or is he the Green Bay coach? I always get those two mixed up. Sirianni.
No, it's.
Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, it's Sirianni.
So who's the Packers coach in?
I
always get the two mixed up.
LaFleur,
yeah. So Sirianni knows that they basically need to put up, or else he's going to have another. He's going to be moving out of the state of Philadelphia. Green Bay, interesting enough, had a very, very solid end to their year. You could argue that they should have been in the Super Bowl because they were in front of 49ers right until the end, and it was just a couple little mistakes from Love, who's a good young quarterback, who just got paid. You could argue that the Packers are on the come as well. So, they're a really interesting game. Game. Probably from my perspective, maybe we'll just break down a couple more games and then we'll maybe leave it at that. If you're good with that.
Yeah.
The Jags versus Dolphins. Probably not a game that would be by the broader American public seen as a huge game, given Jacksonville isn't a huge market, and the Dolphins, I think, are fairly well seen as fair weather. But the Jags last year, I think, were the most disappointing team in the league. They've got Trevor Lawrence, they've got Etienne, they've got
Kirk.
Yeah, they've got this amazing potential
Ingram.
Yeah. Amazing potential offense, and they just did not show up. Gus Peterson, the guy who won the Super Bowl with, I think it's Gus Peterson. won the Super Bowl with the Eagles. That was his first year, I think, as coach.
Yep.
And of the Jags. He has a lot to work with. They've got a potentially very dynamic offense. I see them going into the Dolphins and beating them, potentially. Again, this is another $2.40. I expect that they can at least match the spread. I don't necessarily buy into Tua Tagovailoa. Yes, they've got Bradley Chubb. Yes, they've got some weapons on defense. Who's the guy that was the Jalen Ramsey?
Yeah,
they've got a pretty, they've got some really good defensive players there as well.
He's actually questionable for this week.
Oh, is he really? Okay. Well, and it is at home, so you would expect the Dolphins could come in and should win that. But who knows, mate? Who knows? That's probably one game I'm up in the air about. And probably the last one there is the team I love to hate. They're the West Coast Eagles of the NFL. Entitled pricks. Want them to lose in every way, shape, or form, and that is the LA Rams. If you've looked at their helmet, it looks like they've got a big dick in the middle of it. Pretty much talks about their organisation. I cannot stand them. So they have lost their best player I think they've ever had, who is now retired, Aaron Donald. They are going to go into Detroit, who are, perennial underdogs, but they had a good year last year. Again, gave Kansas City a run, right? So they could be there. At the end of the year, they're in a good division. They should win their division. So it'll be interesting to see how they go at home. They should smack the Rams. They should, but the Rams they've still got Stafford. They've still got Nakua. They've still got some pieces there.
Cooper Kupp.
So I'm just pointing this game out because basically I want to talk about my disdain for the LA Rams, really.
Yeah.
But
you would think a side in the Lions with Goff, Montgomery, Amona St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Raymond, Laporta. You'd think that is just way too much firepower. And the Lions aren't bad on the defensive side either. That should be. If I'm looking at that and they're getting, 3.5? I don't know. I think I'm taking that minus 3.5. I think they do a job on the Rams.
Yeah, well. Yeah.
I think that's at least a touchdown. I think that game there is Lions by at least a touchdown.
Yep. I won't disagree with that. I would agree. I'll be in Louisiana. I'll probably be at a sports bar watching this game, I think. At that time. So it's going to be interesting. The only thing of note that I'll say before we head off is interested to see how Chicago's new quarterback, Caleb Williams, see how he goes for his first game. A lot of people critical of the way that guy conducts himself at times. Cried after he lost a game in his mum's arms after he lost a game playing for USC. These are things that I personally don't really care too much about. But he's got the pink nail polish. I don't know. It seems there's some things there that he does that I don't think necessarily enamored to the macho sort of typical NFL supporter. But they say all this is talent, right? And he's meant to be a generational talent, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
But does
he performs on the field, so
does he have the mindset? Does he have the gusto to be able to play through tough situations? We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I think his link up with DJ Moore is going to be a big one. If they get something going, then they could be dangerous, that little combo there.
Yeah, for sure. All right, mate. Yeah, good pod. Great. Yeah, really enjoyed that. As always, we'll see. Hopefully, we can get another one of these out in between my travels.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully some more good footy news with respects to trades and stuff like that comes out, or rumours and that come out for Freo shortly as well.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be linked to a few.
We always are. All right, mate. Cheers.
All right.